Years of tent camping taught me this: comfort doesn't always mean what you think. Most backpackers assume tents are the more comfortable option. They're familiar, enclosed, and easy to set up. But if you've ever woken up sore, sliding off your pad, or grinding into a root, you know that comfort isn't always guaranteed. Hammocks, on the other hand, feel kind of weird at first, but with the right setup, they can be surprisingly comfortable. In this video, I'll break down how both systems actually feel in the field and help you figure out which one's better for your sleep, your body, and the kind of trips you want to take. So like most backpackers, I started with a tent. It seemed like the obvious choice, and you've probably used one before. You toss down a pad, crawl in, and that's your bed. Simple, but not always comfortable. Now, if you're a side sleeper or you already tend to toss and turn at night, you may prefer the solid ground and inflatable sleep pad that you can use in a tent. But even then, ever woken up at 3 a.m. because your sleeping bag slipped off your sleep pad and now your hips grinding into a root you didn't even notice before? Or you can't quite find the right position because your pad's just a little too narrow and your elbows keep slipping off the sides? Yeah, sleeping in a tent can be a bit rough, especially after a few days out on the trail. Hammocks, however, can be an entirely different and often much more comfortable way of sleep, if they're set up correctly. The trick is getting a hammock that's made for sleeping in and knowing how to properly set it up. You want about a 30-degree hang angle, and this is important, you want to lay diagonally across the fabric. This allows your body to actually flatten out so you're not sleeping like a banana. And the upside is that you've got no pressure points, just suspended comfort. Two of my favorite hammocks are the Warbonnet Blackbird and the Dutchware Chameleon. They're full length, built for sleep hammocks that actually let you stretch out and sleep mostly flat. On the other hand, entry-level hammocks, especially lounging models like some Enos, can be a bit short or too narrow for overnight comfort. They're solid quality for chilling at camp, but if you just throw them up between two trees and try to sleep in them, there's a good chance you'll wake up sore and wondering what the hype was all about. So in that regard, tents are easier to get right on night one. Find a flat patch of ground and boom, you've got your comfy, familiar tent. Something like the REI Half Dome SL2 or the Big Agnes Copper Spur are basically foolproof and super roomy if you're just getting started. Hammocks take more dialing in, but once you've got the system down, some people say they sleep better in the backcountry than they even do at home. And yeah, I'm one of them. One thing I didn't expect when I started hammock camping, just how peaceful it feels. You're not just camping in the woods, you're almost part of the woods at night. Suspended between the trees, swaying gently, breeze on your face. It's a totally different feel from sleeping in a tent. But for some folks, that exposure can feel a little too exposed. No walls, no zippers, just a bug net between you and the wild night, if that. So if that gives you the creeps or you're just a light sleeper, a tent might feel more secure. But sleep's not just about how comfortable you feel mentally, it's also about what works for your individual body. And that brings us to one of the biggest concerns people have with hammocks. What if it wrecks my back? There's no way I'm gonna be comfortable sleeping in that thing. And for people with back or hip issues, this can be a real limitation with hammocks. On the ground with a good pad, tents offer firm, stable support. And that works great for some. But for others, even those with pressure sensitivity or back issues, sleeping on the ground can actually be the problem. Now, I can only speak to my own experience, and this isn't medical advice, but I've got some permanent lower back damage from 20 years of snowboarding, and I avoided hammocks for years because I thought they'd just make it worse. It turns out, at least for me, it was the exact opposite. With a full-size hammock meant for sleeping and a proper hang, I got better support without any joint pressure. And my back actually doesn't have any issues with a hammock. Now, this isn't universal. Some folks try hammocks and still prefer a tent, or they need a firm surface for various reasons. But if sleeping on the ground tends to leave you sore or you have trouble sleeping through the night in a tent, it might be worth giving a hammock system at least a test run. And by the way, if this is helping, I cover backpacking topics like this every week. Feel free to sub if that's your thing. So now, if you do find that a hammock feels comfortable for you, your brain's probably gonna automatically kick into backpacker math mode and say, wow, I'm saving so much weight too. Hammocks are super light. But let's clear up one of the most common assumptions in the tent versus hammock debate. Yes, hammocks themselves are way lighter than tents, but when you factor in a tarp, tree straps, a bug net, and especially an underquilt. And we'll get into that in a minute. You're looking at a complete shelter system. And a beginner hammock setup often lands around 3 to 4 pounds. A single tent with a foam or an inflatable pad could be about the same or sometimes even lighter. But on the flip side, hammock gear often does pack down smaller. And if you're using a frameless pack or you just have less capacity, that flexibility can make a difference in how your pack carries. But in most cases, a full hammock setup will end up weighing about the same as a tent system. And sure, there are ultralight options for both, but don't assume a hammock will save weight by default. And hey, weight only really matters if your shelter actually works in the conditions you're facing. So let's talk storms, soggy nights, and which one keeps you drier when things go sideways. Now, most people feel safer in a tent, and it makes sense. Solid floor, full walls, zip it shut, and you're sealed in. But as we touched on, being sealed in doesn't always mean comfortable. In a storm, tents can get cramped. Cooking in your vestibule can be tight. Gear inevitably gets wet, and you're stuck lying down or hunched over trying not to bump the walls. With hammocks, if your tarp's pitched right, you've got a covered space to move around, cook, change clothes, and stay dry without having to crawl into your sleeping bag. And a wide coverage tarp like the Warbonnet Superfly or the Hammock Gear Journey gives you room to actually live under it, not just survive. That said, tent setups are usually faster and easier for beginners, especially in bad weather. And there's less to go wrong when you're in a hurry. Hammocks offer more livable space if you've practiced your tarp pitch, but tents offer simpler protection straight out of the gate. So pick your weather battle. But protection is only half the game. First, you've got to find a place to camp. And this is where hammocks and tents feel like totally different sports. Tents need flat, clear ground. No rocks, no roots, no big slope. If you're arriving late, if it's dark, or you're hiking through rugged terrain, this can sometimes be a challenge. Hammocks often just need 2 decent trees. You can technically hang over slopes, brush, and even stream beds, as long as you're following leave no trace principles. That flexibility opens up some epic campsites that tent users can't touch. But it's not all magic. If you're high up in the alpine zone, camping in deserts or areas without trees, you're out of luck. So tents win in exposed or treeless areas. Hammocks excel in wooded terrain. And if you know your destination, that choice gets a lot easier. But no matter where you set up, flat dirt or between 2 trees, if you can't stay warm during the night, you're not sleeping. And this is where a lot of hammock first-timers get blindsided. Staying warm in a tent is pretty straightforward. Sleeping bag, sleep pad, done. You're on the ground, and even a basic foam pad gives you insulation from the ground. But in a hammock, that air that's underneath you, it doesn't mess around. Even in the middle of summer, at night, it can pull heat from your back faster than you'd expect. I learned that the hard way on a summer trip in the Sierras. The temps were warm, I brought my basic Eno hammock just to mess around and lounge during the day, and I figured one night, hey, I might try sleeping in it. So I was in the hammock, the sun went down, and within minutes, my back was freezing. I jumped back into the tent and didn't try that again. And that's when I learned, bottom insulation while hammock camping is essential in most conditions. And that's where underquilts come in. These are quilts that hang beneath your hammock, allowing them to trap warm air without getting compressed. Super effective, but they usually cost more than sleep pads and take up more space. Some popular options are the Hammock Gear Incubator or the Enlightened Equipment Revolt. Now, some people do use foam or inflatable pads inside the hammock, and this can work, but they do have a tendency to shift around, which can be a little annoying and might reduce comfort. But that's a totally legit way to try hammock camping without having to commit to an expensive underquilt. So while both hammock and tent systems can be warm, tents are way more beginner friendly when it comes to cold weather. There's no real learning curve, no tricky quilt system to figure out, and no surprise shivering at 2 in the morning. Well, unless your sleeping bag's been lying to you about its rating. But warmth is just another piece of the puzzle. What about bugs? Privacy? Where the heck do you even put all your gear? This is where the real day-to-day experience starts to feel very different between tents and hammocks, and this is where tents really shine. You've got walls, a floor, a roof, your own little room out in the woods. Changing clothes, organizing gear, sealing out bugs, it's all pretty intuitive. Hammocks are more open air by design. You sleep above the ground and your room is split between the hammock and the tarp-covered space around it. It feels breezier, roomier, but also more exposed, especially at first. When it comes to bug protection, both systems work, but tents can be a bit more forgiving. One zipper seals the whole thing. With hammocks, you've got to pay attention to seal lines, bug net tension, keeping the net off your face, and entry and exit points. It's not hard, but it's less intuitive for beginners. The biggest difference with a hammock, in my opinion, is livability. If you've pitched your hammock and your tarp correctly, you can cook, stretch, sort gear, hang out, and sometimes even walk around under your tarp without crawling into your sleep system. Plus, with a hammock, you always have a permanent chair that you can sit down in at any time. Ultimately, neither system is better, but the vibe is totally different. And honestly, when it comes to tents versus hammocks, it's not really about which one wins. It comes down to what you value out there. Do you prefer structure and simplicity or more flexibility in how you camp? If you've only ever used a tent, hammocks can feel like a weird leap. But I'll tell you, once I got mine dialed in, it was hard to look back. And knowing how to use both systems, that's what really opens up your options when planning a trip. And I'm curious, what's your go-to shelter? Or what's holding you back from trying one or the other? If you're still figuring out your full setup or how to put together a trip without totally overthinking it, check out this next video right here. It's all about how to plan your next backpacking trip without losing your mind. All right, stay safe out there, take care of your back, and I'll see you on the next one.